if you're gonna say this guy's untouchable, like if I was in the front office, I would be like, no one is untouchable. Like, what do you think PCA is value? If a GM calls, like I would want that information.
All right, guys. Hey, Lance Brozdowski here with Marquee, Cubs Player Development Analyst.
Right.
That is a really cool title.
Yeah.
Tell me how you self-proclaimed?
Yeah, we were gonna go with insider initially, and then I didn't think I was that much of an insider. Insider makes you think you're like a breaking news. We went in, but I wanted the word player development in there because I think that gets at the tree of everything that's coming out of how players develop, and it doesn't just stop at major leagues. I think that's what keeps me through trying to emphasize. So I love the title. It's a good one.
Well, and it's kind of cool. You and I were talking before I pressed the record button here, and you did not go to school for this. Tell people what you were in school for.
So I was UMass Chambers undergrad in accounting. I worked in the city of Boston, public accounting. I one of the big four accounting areas for like 3-ish years or so. Just really didn't like it, and I knew it immediately. It just took me a little bit to kind of save some money and pivot out. And hard pivoted out to graduate school in Northwestern University and sports media. Initially went in thinking I was going to go with sports general. Just thought there'd be more job opportunities, like be able to talk about all big sports and connections and stuff. And then very quickly realized that I thought it'd just be easier to define a niche in like a camera.
And you're a numbers guy, so like baseball is like the biggest numbers game out there. Yeah. So that had to feed into it, yeah.
For sure, and I've always been a huge baseball. That was always my strongest sport. So I was just wondering whether I needed to understand football better or hockey better, or something that's like branch out, create a bigger pool of potential employers. And at the end of the day, it didn't do that. So
well, we're here at the winter meetings, right? And there's a whole lot of nothing going on right now.
It's incredibly boring.
Is it just because of Shohei? Why do you think it's been so slow?
I don't actually have any idea why it's been slow. I guess there's just a lot of posturing going on. I also think that a lot of the TV stuff is affecting teams, and I know Trev Salchik's been pretty good at writing about this at the store and some other people, but I think that's affecting a lot of teams' willingness to spend, and maybe shrinking down the amount of demand for a given player, and therefore the players waiting, delaying things.
What do you mean by the TV stuff?
Yeah, so Diamond Sports Group. I think the best thing is to go and read Travis' speech. I read actually last night, it's really good. But essentially, the league is potentially going to buy back a lot of the rights to television. This might happen with Guardians and the Rays and some other teams. It's already happened to the Padres and the D-backs. And as a result of that, the amount of school they're getting from TV money is just shrinking. So from a revenue standpoint, it's just going to be low. And as a result of that, then the owner can decide whether he actually wants to spend more money. It's not affected by teams like Chicago and other teams that own their networks or have better standing.
Right.
It's just when Valley Sports bought all those networks at once and like that package deal, there went to a lot of dead board sound and even the red. And I think that's affecting things more than maybe people have. It hasn't really been covered too much. I've seen to get to that side. I really think it's causing people to shrink their pockets, and as a result, there's just not as many suitors for skip players. So big guys got to go first.
Well, it sounds to me like that doesn't really affect the Cubs that much, maybe some of the smaller teams.
No, I don't think. I mean, based on us being in on the time, I don't have any insight info here, but the fact that they're in on the time makes me think
not leaking anything. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about player development, and especially. We've been in trade talks, hearing about the Cubs with Glass now, Bieber, with, there's been a few other names out there, some third basemen. Who to you right now is just like the untouchables? PCA, Cade,
I think it's PCA, Cade, Horton. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't really talked to anybody in New York specifically that's who's untouchable. I think most people would probably just say that they listen on it. Like, you want to understand what the market thinks about a certain player. So, I mean, if you're going to say this guy's untouchable, like, if I was in the front office, I would be like, no one is untouchable. Like, what do you think PCA is value? If a GM calls, like, I would want that information. And maybe they lowball you, but I think any information that you can intake about when the team receives about your player is attractive. So, but I do think it'd be very hard to trade Cade Horton and PCA. Like, both those guys are impact arm and impact glove. We'll figure out what impact goes with PCA. I think he's a guy that's definitely going to bounce back this offseason. I'm excited to see him in spring and talk to him and see what he did. Because I think he's one of the sharpest guys I've ever met. He's incredibly mature as like a 19-year-old. The best 19-year-old interview I've ever had. And he's like the best 21-year-old interview I've ever had. So he's just a really good guy. And he's a really rigorous worker. So I'd be stunned if he doesn't come back. Some adjustment or some kind of vengeance in how he's approaching things. And then Cade is just a frontline starter. Like I don't I don't think we realize he's like a top 2 or 3 pitching prospects in all of teams.
Right.
You know, and I don't know. Maybe it's because a lot of the top 100 lists haven't come out yet, and various sites that are pretty popular, like Baseball America and such. But he's very good. I think the comp that I've thrown out everywhere I've talked about him is just Tanner Bybee from the Guardians. It's a very similar mix. Bybee's changeup's a little more advanced than Cade Horton's, but it's very similar in terms of sweeper, little cut right on the 4 seam, and ability to throw curves. And I think if you can get Tanner Bybee's season last year or this year for the Cubs, you'd be absolutely
Hell yeah.
yeah.
Take that for sure.
Rookie of the year, 140 plus innings,
Yeah.
above average performance. Like, if the Cubs end up not doing a ton on the pitching side of things, I think it's because they have more confidence in Cade Horton maybe than they receive right now. But I still think it'd be smart to ask.
Who's a guy in the system right now? I think there's going to be 1 or 2 of our top 100 guys that we're going to not see with the Cubs in the trade. Who's maybe 1 or 2 of those guys you say, hey, his value is really high, but it doesn't hurt the Cubs that much if they do trade?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you have to think about anyone who moves to a corner outfield spot with having Suzuki being tied up. It's an interesting proposition where you have some outfielders like Kevin Alcantara and Owen Casey. I think they're both exceptional players.
Of course, yeah.
I'm really excited about both of them. But if you think about team fit long term, like it becomes interesting. If PCA is who we think he is, like he's going to be starting field every day for the next 7 or 8 years. And then it makes a lot of sense. Like Owen Casey's already corner outfield. Like, he's a guy that I think could eventually slide to first base. He's got a really strong arm, but he's not the most powerful defender. Overall, incredible power bat. That's his calling card. So he's a guy that I could see like moving to first base. And then you have power bat at first base, which Cubs currently have. I just don't know if he's ready right now for them to do that, especially with the competition when they're going to be opening up for them. So Ken Alcantara too is another one where I think he can play some center field. I think other teams will view him as playing center field, but he's not going to play center field like the PCA. So he moves to a corner. So it's like, okay, if he moves to a corner, like what are you doing with half the season? Like you have both those guys on multi-year deals. Prices. And I think they're both the same, you know. Kevin Hunter's like much more like an outcome. Maybe just end up being like a outfielder, or he can end up being like an everyday center fielder. You know, maybe not like their defense eventually moves to the corner. He's a big guy. But those 2 guys in terms of fit are interesting long term. I'm thinking multi-year picture 2025, 2026. I think Alcantara was the one to me that I'm like wondering whether there's something to be moved. Like I know they love him as in New York, all the hitting guys love him too. Like, I've communicated with him as well. He's super fun, ton of energy, very similar like Christopher Morel, I would say. But I'm not exactly sure where he plays in a year or 2. Unless I mean, you move like I could see him fitting in that direction. But if you're set on the fact that the corner outfields are stuck for the next 3 years with the Cubs, then I'm curious to see what they do with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of those guys right this last year. We just thought, hey, he's going to just, like PCA, just go through the system and maybe even have that September call-up. But really, kind of got slowed down by some injuries, didn't get off to the best start. But I feel like that second half he really took off. Was there anything just from the player development side that you saw that changed for him in that second half?
Yeah, with him, from what I understand, a lot of it is I don't want to say mental, but it's a lot of just getting comfort. You know, like he's a long levered guy, and I think those guys, especially at that age, kind of go out and panic often. And I know they oftentimes like send around coordinators to teams. Like I know multiple times it's 6 coordinators, 2 where Kevin was. So that's like an angle that I just think it takes maturation. It takes $15 million. I don't want to cop myself to him, but I was like a long, lanky kid for most of my life. I had no idea when I was that. That dude's moving 20 times faster than I am moving as an athlete, but.
I can't say the same for myself. So.
Like maybe it's going to take a little longer for him to come. That'll be my value.
So there's a lot of holes that we have to fill on this team right now. With the outfield is pretty much set if PCA is playing center. Middle infield is set. You've got Gomes coming back as probably your lead catcher, but corner infield, starter or 2 plus bullpen. That's a lot of stuff to go fill over an offseason. Yeah. Do you see maybe 1 or 2 of those spots being a really great opportunity for Jed in the front office to say, let's go and see, maybe giving Matt Mervis another shot, maybe giving, I don't know, I've been hearing a lot about potential of Slaughter maybe trying out on third base, right? Just things like that. Do you have any sort of sense on that?
Don't have too much of a sense. I don't think there's anyone in the system that jumps out as third baseman to plug and play at third. One of the main problems. There's been some rumors about him with Chapman. I think that'd be kind of a fun fit. Especially they've had some success over the last couple of years fixing hitters, and Chapman I think just stopped pulling everything last year, which is very odd for his profile. So he's a guy that like if they could just get back to pulling the ball, especially in the field regularly, like think you get back to like 25 plus home runs pretty easily and play serviceable defense at third. So like, I like that as a sign on. You know?
Yeah.
Of course, everyone wants to throw Ohtani. That'd be unbelievable. But I'd love Ohtani and Chapman. I think that adds 2 power bats to your lineup, left, right, and it's beautifully complements. I think the works that is that.
Well, and Chapman, of course, is a great defender. So,
Yes.
But do fans kind of see that again as, hey, I don't want to go through the whole Mancini thing?
I know. I think Chapman's a slightly different case. Like, I don't exactly know how much information we have on like what exactly was up with him last year in terms of not pulling the ball, but I don't think that's a Mancini case, unfortunately. Mancini was a very different signing hitter. I like that signing a lot, actually, at the time. He just unfortunately never bounced back. Again, like, amazing dude from the 1 or 2 conversations we've had with the club. But yeah, like, I think Chapman fits in nicely. Like, I get maybe the concern about being high dollar and not being great last year, and also the fact that, like, most of those pull guys, if they do deteriorate over time, it's bat speed. And then it's like, okay, if bat speed deteriorates and he stops pulling the ball, like, then what is he as a hitter? So maybe, like, 3 years down the road, you get a little concerned about what the offensive profile looks like. And you really got to hope he doesn't move off third base. So maybe there's some concerns around that. You know, he wasn't as electric as he was in 2022. I think that there's a really good chance he bounces back to the 22 levels, honestly.
Cool. All right, 2 more questions. What is the chances that you think that something gets done here before
Just beneficial for us.
Anything?
Just anything in general.
Something has to happen. I was
Something.
devastation.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'd love to see the Glasnow go out.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That makes a lot of sense.
The next day's schedule,
The Razor situation
and the
where
following. So he was always.
they probably already
2
have
days
offers,
ahead.
and there's multiple teams in the mix. So,
And so I think that
it's their initiative as to whether they want to move and how quickly. So I'd love to see that get done. So I gotta imagine there's some move the Cubs back. I'd be stunned if we come out here with unless it's all contingent on Ohtani, which obviously it seems like the Cubs are going to. So this was it.
Cool. All right, last question, fun one for you here. You have had stats that, like, I don't know, do you pull them out of your head or like, okay, so it's not stuff that you're making up. Okay, because I'm over here like, all right, I remember you talking about like Stuff Plus, and I'm like, all right, this is cool, but like, where does it come from? But what's like a stat that you can explain at a secondary level to me that is one of your favorite stats?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really basic things like a really simple one is just strikeout minus walk rate. What percent of guys do you strike out for life and what's up percent of guys you walk and find the difference between
Doing the minor league baseball thing.
right there. You know, that's a really simple, predictive way to look at quality pitching. If you do that leaderboard for last year, you're going to end up with probably every Cy finalists and a variety of other guys. That's like one of the most basic things. Like, it's funny how oftentimes I think we like overcomplicating things, and we're doing that because we want to try to isolate off variables that have a terrific performance. But striking minus walk in particular is like just a really powerful and simple that correlates to success very strongly. And I mean, you want to go a little deeper, something like Stuff Plus is relatively modern. I think Ina Sarris has done a lot of good work and has been publicly now Fangraphs. That's just the combination of velocity, shape, movement, and some basic really standards. There's like the quality of that pitch independent of where you're throwing it and how accurate you land the ball. And again, that's pretty predictive as well for pitching success. You actually have to consider, you know, command and variety of other things. There's always guys who overperform and underperform Stuff Plus. That's a pretty advanced stat that every team is going to have an iteration of that we also now have publicly. And that's all it is. Like velocity, how does the ball move, how is he throwing the ball, and maybe some other small variables. But those 3 components are really what sum up into it. And you can basically see what percent above or below average that guy is on the quality of the pitch.
Smart dude. Got an accounting degree. I didn't. So for that reason, I appreciate you educating me, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.